Hey guys, welcome back to the show. In this episode, I have a really special guest with us today. Some of you may know her from her book talk content that she's been putting out, and some of you may not know her at all, but that's the whole point of this episode. In this episode, we have the wonderful, the amazing, the astonishing, the marvelous Landry Reads today. She's an amazing book talk creator, as I said earlier, and I've been truly looking up to her content. She's absolutely amazing. Anyways, hi Landry, how are you today?
Good. How are you doing today? I'm so excited for this.
Yeah, I'm so excited to be talking to you too. Thank you so much again for coming on the show.
Yes, of course. I was really happy when I saw the invite. This is my first time kind of doing something like this, and I can't wait to just have a nice conversation with you.
Yeah, absolutely. So please introduce yourself and maybe talk about what got you into the book talk community.
Yeah, of course. So, hi, I'm Landry, and yes, I run a Landry Reads little Instagram account. It's all bookish focused content. I have been one of those kids who loved reading since I was like 5 years old. I was the kind of person who my mom would have to come into my room and be like, "Hey, Landry, you need to make sure you're done reading by 9:30. You have to go to bed at a reasonable time." And I would be like, I can't help it. This book is so, so good. So finally, as I kind of grew up a little bit and I started getting really exposed to the social media world, and I started seeing that there was a whole community of like book lovers out there, people just like me, who loved to talk about these kinds of books and just like really connect with other people and put themselves out there, I was like, okay, wait, this is everything that I love. I would love to start doing this. So I started my Landry Reads page. And honestly, it has been one of my favorite things ever. I feel like I've made so many new friends from all over the place. I'm US based, but I have friends who are in Ireland, and I'm just like all over the world. And it's been so fun kind of getting to connect with everyone and be like, hey, there are so many people out here who love reading exactly the same way that I do. And I love to laugh. I love to have fun and putting out the funny content, the bookish content. It's like my favorite things ever.
Yeah, honestly, that sounds amazing. I mean, the whole and I can honestly relate to the whole sleep at this time, you have to stop. It's like when you're reading, right? Reading is almost like, it's cliche, but it's
Hmm.
very much like reading is like a journey.
It
You
is.
the author brings you on the journey and you are almost like you're no longer on planet Earth. You're now in the world of the book you're reading. Like if you're reading a fantasy, you're in that fantasy world. If you're reading a book from the prohibition era, you're in the prohibition era. Like you really are in the story now. You almost are acting like a character who's kind of watching from the side.
Yes, and it can be so hard, I feel like, to really kind of put a book down and escape from that world for a second because I don't want to, when the books are good, like you just want to stay in there for as long as you possibly can. And I mean, I feel like that's the best indicator of a great read.
100%. And on that note, like, what would you say is like your definition of a good book? Like, what changes it
Oh.
differs from like a good book versus like an okay book versus a quote unquote bad book?
I think this is so hard. Something that I've learned with, I think almost 3 years now in the bookish online space is a great book to one person can be the worst book another person has ever read. And I think that the way people perceive what a great read is, it can be so different for so many people. So I know sometimes I'm like, well, this book was okay, but I have a friend who this would be a great book for them. For me, I feel like something that really sets it over the edge is I love a good character-driven story. Okay, yes, a great plot, I love to be, just turning the page, begging for more. But I feel like when I'm really in love with a character and I want to be inside their head and I want to see the development and hear their thoughts, I love a good funny book. Anytime that I'm laughing out loud, I'm very reactive when I read. I will be giggling, kicking my feet, screaming, all of the fun things. And I feel like that is something that's really gonna set a read apart for me is not only a relationship with the book as a whole, but feeling like I have a relationship with the characters and feeling like even after kind of stepping outside of that world, still feeling somewhat attached to the characters inside of it. And I just feel like when they're my friends, and I get to be like, oh my goodness, I remember reading that book. And that makes me most excited to share it with other people and just gush about it.
Yeah, and I absolutely love that you just said that one book that someone might love is some book that someone else might hate because it's just very much like subjective. It's not it's very much like based on your inner taste too. It's like
Hmm.
if you're not into fantasy and you give someone a fantasy book, they're not gonna like it unless they're willing to kind of experiment and try. So on that
Yeah.
note, like how do you sort of like, obviously you've been reading for a while, but for people who are kind of getting into reading or they read only for an assignment, it's more so like a forced thing. How do
Hmm.
you cultivate reading as a habit and like force that upon yourself in a way that doesn't feel like a forced upon thing, but more so like a thing that's almost like, yeah, I love reading kind of thing.
Yeah, something that I tell like anyone I've ever met who's been like, oh, I never really got into reading, I never really liked reading, or I've wanted to get into reading, but I've just always kind of found it boring, is if you don't like reading, it is because you haven't found the right book for you yet. That is always what I tell them. There is a book out there, I truly believe, for everybody. Okay, even the people who like hate reading the most, I know that there's a book out there that like if you can just get a couple pages, like you will become so addicted and it won't feel like something that you kind of have to force yourself to do because I'm someone who like reading is one of my main sources of enjoyment, right? I look forward every single day to sitting down and kind of getting to read my book and really enjoy that story. And I feel like if you're coming from a place where it feels like you have to force yourself to sit down and do something, that's why you're not enjoying it because you're kind of creating that negative relationship with the habit, right? And I feel like anytime you can find something that you love about something, it's going to be so much easier to get yourself to dedicate time to it. So when I'm trying to help someone build like a reading habit, I often kind of try to find like what are you already into? What do you already enjoy? What are some things that already interest you? And then from there, I try to be like, okay, well, here's a book that has a little bit of this, and here's a book that has a little bit of that. And maybe those little aspects can kind of start to appeal to you. The one other thing I would say is when you're trying to get into a book for the first time, allow yourself a couple chapters, I think, to kind of just sit with it. Because obviously, if you just read one page and you're like, nope, I hate it, I mean, maybe the second page was when it got really good. You never know. So I feel like giving yourself a second to read a couple chapters, and then if you're not liking it, like, it's okay. Pick up something else. Life is too short to read books that you don't love. So that is definitely like my main advice for people when they're trying to kind of build that habit of reading is just remind yourself how much you like it or find something that's going to kind of speak to you in that way.
Yeah. I honestly just absolutely, I'm truly in awe with like literally everything you said, because especially like the thing of like life is too short to read a bad book, right? Or read
Yeah.
a book you don't enjoy, or even the fact that, there are far too many, like, there's no such thing as, oh, I've read every single book there is, so I'm not
Hmm.
reading anymore, or there is no book out there that I love. Because as you just mentioned, right? If you're into dragons, magic, and poetry, there's so many books kind of in that similar realm. It may not be poetry, but it still is like written in verse, which is
Yeah.
close enough to poetry, right? And so like you can always find something if you're willing to do that. I feel it's also like part of like the factor of how much do you want to do it and how much of it is
Hmm.
like you kind of like you just want an excuse not to do that one thing, you know?
Yeah, and I feel like that's a big thing with you were kind of mentioning people who maybe only read for like educational purposes, like an assignment through school or something. I have a strong belief that like if you've only read things through kind of like school or an educational lens, you're not probably reading for enjoyment purposes. And I feel like that is a huge part of kind of what starts that negative relationship sometimes with reading is that you were always kind of taught like, hey, like you're reading this to complete something else. And I feel like that really takes away from enjoying the reading process, getting to know the characters, getting to kind of let go and enjoy the plot and let the author kind of take you on a journey. And I feel like that really shifts your focus towards how fast can I finish this and move on with this like assignment or this overall task now that's on your to-do list that you just want to be able to cross off. And that's really not what reading is. Reading is enjoying the process of doing it, right? Not, I mean, obviously, I love marking a book as read, like working towards my Goodreads goal as much as the next girl, but like you really do want to enjoy, I feel like, the process of getting to kind of be in the world of something else that you're not familiar with.
Definitely. And also just like the whole concept again of reading when you feel like reading, right?
Hmm.
Because when you are kind of just again, as I said, the whole Goodreads thing, you want to make that goal. You
Hmm.
want to be like, yes, I finished my 100 books of the year. If in those 100 books you did not find like one, like someone asks you, hey, would you recommend me reading this book? Like, how is it? Like, could you talk a little bit about what it is? If you're unable to talk about it or you're unable to like pinpoint one particular scene from there that you really love, you were not reading it, you were just skimming it.
I
And
agree.
skimming, again, people say skimming is just reading quickly. Skimming is also like reading, but not paying attention to the words. So you're just kind of like reading it to get a brief thing of, yeah, I read,
Yeah.
you know?
And
Yeah.
and I feel like that's a really fast way to get like reading burnt out or we call it a reading slump when like nothing sounds good anymore. And I feel like that's kind of what happens when you stop letting yourself read purely for enjoyment purposes and doing like what you want. And I know that sometimes over on the book talk and bookstagram worlds, it can feel controversial to like DNF a book. But I am like a huge kind of in the camp of sometimes you do need to DNF a book or even reframe it in your mind is just kind of setting it aside for a time when you feel more ready to come back to it. Because by continuously forcing yourself to, you know, kind of digest this content that you're not really enjoying, right? You're taking kind of that fun out of the hobby. You're making it more into a job. And like you don't need to do that all the time when it comes to reading. Like we've been saying is reading is so much about finding joy in these pages in this like work and I feel like by only viewing it as this thing that has to happen or has to be done or needs to be completed is the fastest way to kind of reinforce again that negative relationship with books.
100%. I absolutely agree. And, kind of like changing gears a little bit, kind of being more in the fun realm of things, is what is your favorite book trope? I know we kind of connected over people we meet on vacation, which is when I first
Yeah.
interacted with you. But like just overall, like what's your favorite book trope?
Oh my goodness. Okay, I feel like this question can be so difficult sometimes because I am definitely an enemies to lovers girl, which I feel like is a very like I get that it's a trending response, it can feel very basic, but I do love I think just that visible transition from like, hey, like we're not really vibing with each other, we're not really liking each other into like the wait a second, like hold on, I think that actually we're falling in love. I feel like that is the fastest way for me to just be again like giggling and kicking my feet and enjoying a read, like guaranteed to be a good time. I also love a lot of the like grumpy sunshine opposites attract or even in again that enemies to lovers like vein of thinking, academic rivals is one where I feel like I need to read a lot more of those books and I feel like I need to like get into that world a little more because every time I read one I'm like, oh, this is so good.
Yeah, like I honestly like this again, as you said, there is no wrong answer. It's like especially with like enemies to lovers, like when there's like a lot of books by Susan Lee and Liang. And Liang probably has the best academic rival to lovers stories that I've ever read. Like they're amazing.
Okay, I've been hearing a lot about her. I've been wanting to like
And
give her
Liang
books
and
a try.
Susan Lee definitely are to be on the radar. Like
Okay.
they're really like snappy with their words, very like
Okay.
very new and stuff. And then Susan Witherspoon just put out a book that she worked on, and then the Dean one that she just is releasing, I think in April, or maybe it's already released. But there are a lot of like again, there are a lot of layers to the whole enemies to
Mm-hmm.
lovers. Like there's so much to it. Like you just mentioned a bunch, right?
Mm-hmm.
And there's just so many layers. I feel like for me personally, I love enemies to lovers, but I also love like friends to lovers so much,
Mm-hmm.
especially when they're done correctly.
Yes.
I feel like with enemies to lovers, oftentimes the books I've read fall short in the sense of where it feels too rapid. It feels like
Mm-hmm.
on one page in the first five chapters they're enemies, but then we cannot really see that shift.
Mm-hmm.
I wanted to be taken on the journey. What made you shift from hating this person to loving this person? Was it like you always loved this person, but the hate was strong and so you couldn't? Or was it more so just this one interaction with them made you fall in love and ignore the fact that you hate this person, right?
Yes, and I completely agree with that. I feel like enemies to lovers in itself has also, I feel like, become a little bit of a controversial topic because like what is defined as, and I'm doing air quotes here, but real enemies to lovers. And I feel like it is kind of this way with any book, is any trope can be good when that trope is done so well by a certain author. Because yes, with enemies to lovers, like, okay, cool, we love that they're enemies and we love that they're lovers, but it is all of that part in the middle that is really going to make you kind of connect and fall in love with those characters. And I completely agree with everything you just said. And similarly with friends to lovers, I love like a good friends to lovers that's done right. You mentioned people we meet on vacation. I will say people we meet on vacation has been one of my just like most favorite recent reads. I loved it so much. I thought it was so cute and I was so impressed with Emily Henry's writing and just the development between the two characters. And it really did feel like I was kind of getting to catch up with old friends and just like hang out with two people because I felt like I knew them so well. And I felt like she did such a wonderful job of explaining how their connection developed throughout the story. And we really got to see those moments where they kind of slowly fell for each other a little bit more and more. And that's always better than just the rapid, on one page they're one thing and on the next all of a sudden they're like madly in love with each other. And you're like, wait, but what happened in between all of that? And
Mhm.
I think that is something that will really like make a good book a great book is when you're able to see that development and that kind of like spiral into falling in love with each other.
Yeah, absolutely. And I think, it's just like, even I would say, okay, this might be a hot take to some people, but I feel like writing a good romance book is probably harder than writing like a thriller book. And I say that because with thriller, you can make mistakes and still be having a good book if you have strong characters. But with romance, if you miss out on the romance aspect of it, even if your characters are the best characters in the world, it's just not, nothing's happening because the romance is the main focus.
I feel like I can understand what you're saying there. I definitely read like a majority of romance or fantasy. I do love an occasional like mystery book or something though as well. But I do feel like with romance, that can be a really difficult genre to pull off because there really isn't anything other than, two characters and the romance between them. And I feel like when you're kind of writing a book like that, there is a lot less room for error. You have to really, I feel like, get it right or really kind of dive into that topic and flesh out those characters in order to see such a beautiful, romance. You're not going to get that from something very, very simple. And that is why, like, I am applauding, like, my favorite romance book authors. I'm in awe of some of their writing and the fact that, like, this concept that I feel like when you kind of think about it, you're like, wait, this is set in our world. These are all fairly like normal characters. It can be very quickly written off as like there's nothing extra interesting about it. But there are so many romance books that I've read multiple, multiple, multiple times because I love them so much. And I want to keep going back and I want to keep feeling those little moments where the characters are realizing they're falling in love with each other.
Yeah. And I guess now my last question for you is what are your last words for our audience before we wrap up today?
I just want to say that first off, anyone listening, I'm so thankful that you guys are taking a second to kind of come out and chat with us today. But also, I think that starting my like Bookstagram page has been just one of the best choices I've ever made. I'm so, so grateful for all of the people who come out and kind of join my community because that really is what it feels like. I'm sure that there's a lot of dreams out there to have, these super grand follower counts. And I think that that will get you some places, but ultimately, it is a lot lonelier to have a large number of followers who don't care at all about what you're posting and your content. And I just feel like those connections that I've been able to make have been the most wonderful things to me. And also something that I have personally just kind of been focusing on recently. I recently made a post about kind of putting my dreams out into the universe, right? And chasing them. And I think I would just say to anyone listening, like, don't be afraid to kind of chase after those things you love because I feel like it can feel really scary at first. But hey, like, I started my Bookstagram just a couple years ago. I would have had no idea I would ever even be coming on a podcast to interview. And here we are. Like, you guys are all hearing this right now. And you are kind of taking a chance away from yourself to possibly discover something really, really great by letting kind of fear hold you back from something. So if there's something you're excited about, don't be afraid to put it out there. Don't be afraid to kind of keep it in your mind somewhere and work towards it when you're presented with those opportunities because it could turn into something really amazing. And I am always going to be over here cheering for you guys. So yeah, I think that's about all.
Wow, honestly, like that's like the most beautiful message I think that we can end this episode on because just it's all about trying, honestly, because you lose every shot you don't take. And I kind of
Exactly.
repeat that in a lot of my episodes, but obviously it's borrowed advice, right? It's
Hmm.
very much about just kind of taking that leap. Like you said, you would not have known book talk was your thing until you tried. I would not have known podcasting was my thing until I tried. It's really a matter of like putting that step forward and being like, hey, let's do this thing. If it happens, it happens. If it doesn't, it doesn't. But there's so many more things to explore and understand and kind of navigate and embrace as we go through our creative journeys. So thank
Yeah.
you so much, Landry, for, coming on the podcast and taking your time out for this wonderful interview.
Yeah, thank you so much for inviting me. This was really great, and I'm really, really excited to see where our paths take us in the future.
Yes, thank you so much. And everyone listening to this episode, make sure to check out Landry's Instagram. I'll be linking in the show notes. And make sure to support her on her book talk accounts, but also like, connect with her and talk to her. She's amazing, as you could probably tell from this interview. And I'll see you all next week. Have a great day, everyone, and I'll see you again. Anika Goyal out.